Hello, coffee lovers, and welcome to the God Country Live Video Podcast, airing every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And now, live from Seguin, Texas, and other places around the world, your host, Jose Roberto Alanis Jr.
Hello, coffee lovers. It's 1900. It's Friday night, so that means it's time for God Country Coffee. And I got this theme of Marines that just keep coming on the show. I don't understand it. It's pretty awesome. We have a great guest tonight. As usual, I'll put in the links as we're going. I'm still trying to support Brian and Kat Stacy. Kat is trying to recover from cancer. They're extremely godly people. They put all their faith in God. And so I think I ask about this GoFundMe more than they do. But, Brian hasn't worked in several months because he's been at the hospital in Mexico with Kat. And anyway, anything that you can do, especially if you can just share it, that's probably the best thing that we can do is share it. So I'll put that in the comments at some point. Other than that, I'll put D1, which is the code for our discount code for anything on the shop. And other than that, I'm going to bring on my guest, and then we'll get started with the show. All right, hang tight. Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Hey guys, what's going on?
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And it's very unusual for me not to be drinking coffee, but when I roast, I drink a cup from every single batch.
Okay.
And so I did 10 hours yesterday and about 11 and a half the day before of nonstop roasting both days. And so I have to back off a little bit so I can taste other foods again. I am drinking.
Do you do anything to kind of reset your palate?
I quit drinking coffee for about a week.
Okay.
That's what I do. Like I drink no coffee at all. I won't drink any coffee for about a week. And it is brutal. And if I'm in a pinch, like if I'm on a really bad pinch, I go back to my uniform days, and I do the the energy drinks, and
It's got to be a rip it, right?
What's that?
It's a rip it, right? You got to hit a rip it.
I drink Reigns.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I'm always up for something else.
Well, Rip It is like the official energy drink of any war. I mean, in Afghanistan, that's all we had. We had Rip Its, and we had these things called Mega Sports, which they only had one flavor, and that was lemon lime. And still to this day, I refuse to have a lemon lime flavored anything. I won't do a lemon lime. And of course you had water that had been sitting out in the sun for, since Iraq, so that's all you had to drink. So in my truck, before we'd leave the compound, every time we'd call out Rip It time, and we'd all crank a little 8-ounce can of Rip It. That's kind of a little ritual.
That's funny. I got out of the service before most of the guys who went to Iraq and Afghanistan got out of high school, or even got into high school. I mean, I don't know. What year were you born?
91. I'm 30 years old.
Yeah. So I joined the service in 90, and then I got out in 94. And that was, one of the guys that I served with, Scott Riley, he's still in the reserves, and he got deployed 2 years ago, year before last. He got deployed last year or the year before last. I don't know. It's a new year. I get confused. That's what happens when you get old, man. You start forgetting stuff. But we served together, and then I got out. And then when 9/11, a lot of guys that we served with were going back in. I was like, man, go. They need people. They don't need to train. And so some of the guys went in. Scott stayed in. and I actually got to see him and one of our other shipmates, John, in Florida last year. I went this time. I went March because my dad's birthday is the 17th, and it's John's birthday, and we hadn't seen each other since 1992.
Yeah.
And so we kind of got back together, and it was nice to see my shipmates, man. I hadn't seen them in forever. Scott had got back from his deployment, and so he was transitioning. But anyway, well, listen, man. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for taking your time. I appreciate it. As always, I like to thank God for everything that He does in my life. And I'm going through some transitions right now, and I don't quite understand them, but I know that God's in control. And so I put my trust in Him, and I know that as long as I do that, He's just going to continue to bless me and my family and my business.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I thank God for that. As we get started, what I usually do, I ask you a question. And while you're doing that, I'm going to share the podcast to the other platforms before we get into anything really deep. And so tell us where you're from, where you were raised, if they're different, and then what led you to join the service. If you were a child, kid, tell us that. It's always fun to hear.
Yeah. So I was born and raised actually in Greensboro, North Carolina. My dad's family moved down here in the 70s, and my mom's family is from just outside Greensboro in a town called Winston-Salem. And so born and raised here, actually grew up here and graduated high school from here. And then my mom and dad are actually Marines, and so they actually met at the reserve unit that I later ended up serving time at as well. So all three of us served at the same reserve unit at different times. So basically, wow. Mom was active duty. She spent time in Okinawa as a heavy equipment operator. And then she got out of the Marine Corps and then came back in as what they call an active reservist, which is you're an active duty Marine, but you work at a reserve unit. And so she went on as an admin staff, basically just, doing admin work. And then my dad was a reservist from 80 to 92 at the Greensboro Reserve Unit. And so he finished as a gunnery sergeant there in 92. And so they met there, had me and my brother. And so now my brother is actually he's an officer in the Navy. He's an ensign. He just commissioned back in December. Gave me this pretty sweet coin. That was actually my great grandfather's coin from 1887. Let's see if we can see that. If you can see the instructions there. Ensign Sean and Kirwan presented to me, and that's my name. And so I flew up there to Maine in December in the freezing cold. I lost 22 pounds last year. I went from 177 down to 157 in about 8 months to fit back in my dress blues so I could go and see him graduate and put my dress blues on. He wanted me to be his first salute, and so I did it. It's been 5 years since I've worn them, 5 years since I shaved my beard and got a fade again. I've always kind of had the fade, but never a skin fade, So yeah, that was a great experience. And then my sister is actually stationed on the USS Wasp in Norfolk, and she's an E4. She actually went in February of 2020. So her 8-week boot camp was a 12-week boot camp, and she got quarantined like 4 or 5 times.
Oh, wow.
Like didn't even do battle stations. Just couldn't do it. Yeah. And so, she's an E4, Sean, and both of them are older than me. I went in at 19. Okay. So I joined during the war, went in at 19, did the whole thing, came back, reserves, Afghanistan, reserves again, then got out. But my brother is 18 months older than me, and my sister is 10 years older than me. My brother just went in last year at 32, 31, and then my sister went in at 38. So, but
Wow.
that's the rundown on me. I graduated from Guilford Tech. It's a local community college in Greensboro. And then did my bachelor's degree online at Liberty University. Finished that in 2019. My daughter was born in 2018. And then I just found out last Friday we're having a little boy born. He's going to be due in July.
Wow, dude, that's amazing. First off, the backstory on your family is ridiculous. I mean, I come
also
from
grandpa would spent like 10 years in the Navy too, and all of his brothers were in World War II.
So my dad was in the military, and his youngest brother joined the military. Dad was in during the 50s. He was in Turkey when the Russians shot down the U-2. His youngest brother joined because of dad, and he ended up doing, I don't know how much time in Laos during Vietnam. And then we have other family members that were in, well, we have there was 9 or 10 uncles on both sides of the family that were all World War II guys. We had one guy that was basically a medic pulling people off the battlefield. And then I've got a great uncle who was in, I've got all the documentation where he went to France in World War I. And so I've always thought that, that's a pretty solid military chain, but I mean, both parents and then your whole family. I mean, that's just amazing. Talk about service to your country. You guys, I mean, it doesn't get any more service than that. I mean, your whole family, that's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, my dad, he has 6 sisters and a brother. He was the only one that joined out of that crowd. But yeah, and I mean, my wife told me that I can't, influence that on my children, but, which is fine. My parents didn't want me to join the military. The reason my dad joined because he wanted to get out of town, and I think he wanted to do something different. But he worked really hard. What's really inspiring about the story behind my family is, my grandfather went to school at night, had 8 kids, put food on the table, retired from the same job that he started at AT&T. And then my dad turned around, provided for 3 children, went to school at night, worked for AT&T and IBM, and then, was in the military, all that. And then I did the same thing. I joined the military, and I went to school at night and had kids and did all that. And so each generation has kind of taken the harder path. It's been, and especially the path that I took was forged and brought onto me by a clear message from God to not just be okay with, he had bigger plans for me. He had more opportunities for me. And he pushed me towards getting a higher education. And ultimately that higher education ended up affording me the opportunity to work a job that granted me the freedom that I have to be able to make the impacts that I have in my community, to give me the free time to do that. So, and to be able to offer whatever kind of financial resources that I have to be able to use that for his glory, really. I mean, so, it's been a really, looking back on it, seeing how God has worked in these little pieces of my life that have been amplified over the years, like a ripple effect almost. So that's been really cool to see, but, it's really a crazy story with I'm only 3rd generation. My grandfather was born here, but his dad, great grandpa Joe, was from England and Ireland. So just in 3 generations, we've been able to make such progress as a family. So it's a great burden to bear for sure. And it's something we're really proud of.
Yeah, that's, and it's always that first generation that gets here that just for whatever reason they came here, we're going to make a better life. And part of that, my grandfather on my mother's side, he didn't ever serve. He had flat feet and he had all kinds of other medical issues, but he came here from Mexico. And the most important thing, this is why I get so frustrated with immigration. He was so frustrated. He made me frustrated with my because of the way he lived his life. But he got here, and the number one thing that was important to him was to get his paperwork correct. So he got his citizenship. He was a naturalized U.S. citizen, or whatever you call it. When you get your green card, and he started a business, and then he started another business, and I wish that I would have been a little bit older. I wish my parents would have had me. If my sister's about 2 years older than me, and that might have been enough. It might not have been enough, but I wish I could have, checked out how he did business, because he was illiterate, couldn't read or write a word of English or Spanish, but he made millions of dollars, and I don't know how he did that. And but he was really good at what he did. He was great with people, but it's always that first generation, man. It's just it sets the tone for the rest of your family,
It does.
for everybody after, and so I think it's really cool. But, again, sons don't follow their father's footsteps. I did. My dad was, I'm not going to say that I thought he walked on water, but he was definitely Superman-ish, and I always just, admired him. And my son wants nothing to do with the military at all. He's government control and all this other stuff, he just doesn't, he's just not his thing. And he's a really smart kid, but he just,
whether he works for the government in the military or not, there's still government control, but if you look hard enough.
Yeah. Until and I left my job to run this business. This is my 4th business that I've done. The first 3, I knew nothing what I was doing, ran them all into the ground. It was the same business. I tried to do welding 3 separate times. And by the time I got finished, I was a master welder, still didn't know anything about business. And so it was rough, but I didn't also have the community of veterans, entrepreneurs that I have now, with the Vetpreneur Tribe and all the different groups that are out there, of us veterans helping each other, especially with business. But so I still I'm fascinated by your story, man. But let's get into what you did in the military. What did you do in the military?
Okay. So I joined in 2011, just shortly out of high school. I took Adderall growing up basically all my life. And so I had to be clean of that for a whole year before I could sign up. So I decided I wanted to join the Marine Corps in December of 2010, 2009, can't remember. And then I was actually cleared to get in, and December of 2010, I signed did the whatever, swore in, and then I was gone in 2011. So basically I wanted to do a skill that I felt like I could transfer outside of the military. Dad convinced me to go reserve because he wanted me to go to school. He had saved his whole life basically for me to go to school and wanted me to do it. So I went reserve, and I got attached to the Greensboro Reserve Unit. They're a communications unit. They're part of CLR, Combat Logistics Regiment 451. The last I heard, I don't know if they've left that regiment or not. But so went to Paris Island in February, from February to May, and then came home for my 10 days. Went to combat training and Camp Geiger there in North Carolina. And then went straight out to 29 Palms and spent, I think it was 4 months I spent in 29 Palms as a boot. And so that was pretty fun. I met some probably one of the best friends I've had since then. His name's Scott Pitcher. We've probably the one that I've kept up with the most since getting out of the Marine Corps. But then came back off reserve duty, or came back to reserve duty in Greensboro, started going back to school, all that, and didn't really like it that much. As far as the reserve side, I really enjoyed being a Marine. I was good at it, and I really missed it pretty much from the second that I got done. So did everything I could to try and find a deployment to go to, and got lucky and was able to sign up to go to Afghanistan and volunteered for that. So 2013, we went up to Quantico to do some preliminary training in Quantico in January. It was freezing cold, walking to the showers in the snow and things like that. And then left Quantico, showed up at Camp Lejeune in March, and just basically, hit the ground running when we got to Lejeune. Stayed over in French Creek. If anybody knows what that is, it's like the bottom feeders, or at least what I felt like, no AC and mildew and who knows what else, and the ventilation systems and stuff like that. So stayed at French Creek, was part of Combat Logistics Battalion 6, which, if you don't know, logistics battalions are basically, we provide everything that we usually attach to, so in our particular situation, we were the CLB that was on Camp Leatherneck when we were in Afghanistan. And so we had the most trucks, and we provided the most logistical support for all of Afghanistan, really, and all of our forward operating bases. So we'd haul gear, equipment, anything that needed to go out to some of these FOBs and COPs. And so we conducted a lot of we conducted a lot of convoys. We had 3 platoons. We had 3 platoons, and we were always outside the wire going someplace. So was there from May to December, and I was there during part of the drawdown. So towards the end there, things got not slower, but we wanted to spend less money, and we wanted to bring troops home. So that's what they started doing. But while I was there, basically they handed me a radio, and they said, "You're going to learn how to use this." I went to comm school to be a telecommunications Marine. And so I did that. And then they were like, "Oh, you're communications. Well, here's a radio. Figure out how to use this." And so I wasn't there in a logistics battalion. There's usually a communications unit or a communications platoon that'll do comm work for the whole battalion. Well, I didn't get put in that. I got put into Transportation Support Company, which meant I was embedded into a platoon full of motor vehicle operators. And so that meant that I worked on the trucks, drove the trucks, greased the trucks, everything that was involved. I did that stuff. I didn't have the licenses for everything. I had the 7-ton license when I got to Afghanistan. They put some of us through a course so that we could drive them. So I had a 7-ton license, which was really fun. I got to drive a 7-ton on one convoy. That was sweet. And so, but I did all sorts of stuff. My main responsibility, like I said, was with the radios. So me and 2 other guys would set up the communications for the whole convoy, which was great because they were pretty much never going to work the whole time anyways. So nobody really expected much of us. So we'd set up the communications, and then they would inevitably fail, and we'd go back to, doing nothing on the convoys except just sitting there and listening to music. And so I sat in the assistant convoy commander's truck, which meant basically anything that was going on internally to the convoy, whether it was an IED explosion or somebody's load shifted or somebody needed refueling, we would always go up and help or advise or provide security and things like that wherever we were. So that was pretty much my tour in Afghanistan. Came back in December, and 2 weeks later, I was back in a classroom trying to compartmentalize the last 5 months, I guess. And then I ended up getting out in 2017. The years from 2014 to 2017 were, I don't know, not great. They were nothing really compared to Afghanistan or active duty. Trying to convince people who have never served in a war effort or had never really had that level of, I mean, they were Marines, but the typical reservist attitude shone through a whole lot more than it did before I went to Afghanistan because I knew the difference. And so it was just hard for me to kind of have 1 foot in, 1 foot out all the time. I just didn't feel like the reserves was really for me anymore. So when my time ran up, it ran up. We were out of Afghanistan, or at least they weren't deploying massive amounts of Marines there anymore. I think they declared the war effort over in like 2015 or something. But anyways, I didn't feel like I had a war to fight there anymore, and so I got out.
That's I don't know. It's a common thing that I've got a lot of guys that went overseas, and I never served in combat. I got out when a couple of years after you were born. So there wasn't much going on in the world, man. In 1994, we caught the tail end of the first Gulf War.
Yeah.
Which kind of put us in that bracket to get the whatever it is, you get the national defense, and then you get the Cold War thing when they did that. But a lot of guys that come, I've had a lot of people on the show too. So that kind of leads me into my next question is, so you clearly were already, having a transition problem when you were still active or in the reserves before you got out, because you went overseas, did your active duty time. How was that transition after you okay, I'm getting out of the Marine Corps?
So I think the first 2 or 3 years were not that bad, because I was so busy with getting my career started, and I focused really hard on just kind of burying that part of my life and just sort of, letting go the fact, I did my time, I'm moving on, and I'm just going to not necessarily forget about it, but just try and, whatever you call it, reassimilate. And I tried that, and I just tried to bury everything. And then back in like 2019, I started to notice the residual effects of depression and PTSD and isolation and things like that. And so it wasn't the kind of PTSD where, I wanted to be huddled up, and I was always on the edge of taking my own life or anything to that extreme. But it was the kind that just made me stop trusting people, made me want to isolate myself, not really feeling a sense of purpose anymore, and just kind of going through the motions on a lot of stuff. Even though I had my faith and I had good things, I was happily married, all that good stuff. It just felt like there was a really, really large part of my life just missing. Like I said, mom and dad are both Marines, so I grew up in that mindset and in that kind of atmosphere. And the Marine Corps had such an impression on me. I mean, there are some people who are, who buy in and they do their 4 years and they get out and they're, they still wear their veteran cap, things like that. But like, I was really in to that because I grew up, I'm 5'6" and I weighed like 130 pounds when I graduated high school. And I was covered in pimples and wasn't that popular or funny. So growing up, I just there was nothing extraordinary about me. There's nothing that made me any different than anybody else. And so the Marine Corps was like the first thing that I had in my life that made me stand out and that allowed me to have something that I could hold on to and be proud of. Nobody could take it away from me. And to just walk away from that feeling like I had left so much on the table, because if I had stayed in, I knew I could have kept getting promoted and, maybe I could have made a whole career out of it, but, I just didn't. And so, but I still had this pretty big hole in my life and didn't know how to fill it. And so, to back up a little bit, in 2014, one of the first friends that I made, David West, at my reserve unit in Greensboro, he took his own life in 2014. And then a year later in 2015, a Marine who served underneath me in Afghanistan, John Burnell, he took his life. And then 3 weeks later, another friend named Sal, who served with us in Afghanistan, died in a motorcycle accident. And then 2 weeks later, my grandfather died. And not to pack it on, but it just really felt like it's veteran suicide from that moment on was a really big issue in my life. And not only that, but just the perspective of seeing, how you are in your relationships with people, because you might have said goodbye to somebody for the last time. I never talked to John again when I left Afghanistan, never talked to Sal again, all that kind of stuff. So I just really felt like I was missing. The Marine Corps is going to continue on, right? The Marine Corps doesn't need me anymore. But the guys that I served with, the guys and gals that I served with, I felt like I was leaving them behind. And I really needed to be around other people who understood and had been through what I've been through. Not because a civilian can't understand, but it's just different. It's just different to talk to somebody who has been, because the military is such a unique fraternity that it's like that thing the young kids are saying, if you know, you know. And so I was missing that part in my life. And so I was like, I miss veterans. I'm tired of hearing about veterans killing themselves. I feel like the issue is isolation, sense of purpose, and a void that can never be filled in people who don't understand you. And so I was like, how can I use the tools and the resources that God has given me to love and appreciate and show veterans that they still have a purpose. They can be loved and appreciated. And, hopefully we can create some community to prevent suicide. And so in 2019, right after I graduated, we did this thing called Hump for the 22 in Greensboro, where we put on 22 pounds and we rucked for 22 kilometers. And it was fun. It was sort of just thrown together. I didn't know what I was doing. But we made it work and it was a good time. And so I did that for 3 years. And in 2021, I actually stood up a nonprofit and tried to make it really legit, built a website, did the social media stuff. And it was still really hard to get traction. I think the hardest part was convincing people to walk 22 kilometers. It's a lot. It was a lot when you're at your peak, physical condition in the military. It's it's even more to ask somebody from the Air Force or the Navy who don't hike like that, you know. And so the only people that we had out there were Marines and Army. And so then I hear about Irreverent Warriors, and I'm looking at their business model. I'm looking at their social media outlets and everything like that. I'm like, they have successfully done something here. I wonder what they're doing differently. And so I put in a request, and I had a meeting with Nate McDonald, who's their COO. And I basically said, what do you think I could do to be able to capture what you guys have? And in no uncertain terms, he basically said, well, you could be a local coordinator in Greensboro and join the Irreverent Warriors. And I was like, for like a split second, it's like, well, but I kind of have this other thing that I like doing. It's kind of like my thing. But then I got to thinking about it and praying about it. And I was like, but look at what they're doing. Their hikes have 150 hikers easy. They've had hikes in the 400s, and they have 90 hikes a year. They have a massive social media presence. They have corporate sponsors. It's like, you're never going to be able to replicate this. So if you can't beat them, join them. So I went to my first hike in Raleigh of last year, and immediately felt the void was filled at that first hike in Raleigh. I was immediately greeted by people who look like me, didn't really talk like me. I don't talk. I've done a good job cleaning up my mouth over the years. But it just felt, it was everything about the military minus the military. It was none of the 15 minutes prior to 15 minutes prior jargon, none of the stuff that you hated. It was just the fun stuff. It was like Friday night at the barracks, and it just, not a care in the world. It was just fun, man. We put on silkies. We paraded around Raleigh. We listened to music. We danced. We laughed. We sang. We ate. I mean, it was refreshing. And honestly, it was what I needed to really feel whole again. And so that's what I did. And I told Nate, I was like, I'm ready to be a coordinator, and here we are, and we're rocking and rolling. We're doing really good things so far.
That's really encouraging, because I know that, and I never know what my reach is. We were looking at analytics today for some of the shows, and you just never know. And I know you and I discussed this a little bit. You just never know who's out there listening that needs to hear something you say or something I say. And that's why I do this. I am a non-combat veteran. I tell people all the time, when I do my TikToks, I put hashtag non-combat veteran, because I can't really relate to some of the things that some of the guys struggle with. I just can't. I can't. What I can do is I can encourage you with, what's in, the book that sits next to me all the time. I can show you the Bible, and I can show you scripture. And I guarantee you I even had an opportunity to talk to an individual one time, and I can't even remember how we got connected, but somebody said, man, you need to talk to this guy. He's talking about hurting himself and whatever. And I was able, not knowing, right, because I've never done that before, but I learned afterwards a few things, but I just encouraged him with Joshua 1:9. And the way I told him, I said, that scripture, it's be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid, for the Lord thy God is with thee wherever thou goes. And I said, what that means is that no matter what happens, when your family doesn't want to hear it anymore, when your girlfriend leaves, when your battle buddies are not answering their phone, there's still an inexhaustible source that you can reach out to. And so you are never alone, period. and so that's what I have. But it really is important that people like you get involved with stuff because, when someone like, and I'm not saying that, I mean, we're all military, so there's already a kinship there. Of course, us, Navy guys and Air Force guys don't PT like y'all do, but that's because we have guys on the ship making homemade donuts and bread. I mean, I don't know how you get around that.
Yeah,
but it's a lot. I could see somebody, and one of the reasons why I've never got into it is I could see somebody who if I was trying to talk to them about something, I could easily say, "Man, have you ever been shot at?" No, I haven't. Do you know what it's like? I said, "No, I don't." And so people who have been in theater can say those things. Yeah, I have. And it's great to have somebody who is godly and has struggled and come out the other side with whatever resources. I think God's just set you up he's given you lots of ammunition.
He has. And I think the other thing too is he's given me perspective and empathy towards things that I can't understand. Yeah, I've been shot at, but it wasn't, we passed through a lot of firefights. It wasn't constant for me. I can't sit here and, I don't have a combat action ribbon or anything like that. But, I think the other part that Irreverent Warriors has done is it's broken down the stigma that just because you haven't been in those situations doesn't mean that you don't struggle. Because we care about, veteran suicide can be caused by a lot of different things, not just PTSD, right? So it can be caused by, again, no purpose, isolation, feeling like you're letting everybody down, things like that. You get out of the military and you think that you're going to have this plan, and then it's just going to be foolproof. You're going to go to school. You're going to get a great job. And then stuff starts breaking down. And then the next thing somebody finds you dead. And so we have broken down that barrier of, this is not just a combat veteran problem. This is a veteran problem, and not every veteran has that experience, and we're never going to discount them for that. And so, I mean, we have Coasties who are part of Irreverent Warriors, who are valued members of what we do. And the thing that I love about Irreverent Warriors is when I'm around them, we don't even talk about what we did or didn't really do in the military. It's just, what are you doing now? And how are you using the life that God has given you to enrich yourself, to love your neighbor, to love others? That's the kind of thing that I put on those around me, is like, yes, I love the opportunity to witness to others, but I make the connection first. And I prayed for well over a year that God might give me an opportunity to be able to love others, and to specifically be able to love and witness to the veteran community, because, many years went by and I'm sitting there going, why was it that I was in this situation and I got to live? I dealt with a lot of survivor's guilt. Why did I live? Why did he die? Why did she die? And so I dealt with that for the longest time. And actually, what's funny is my old driver from Afghanistan, his name is Bobby Baker. Bobby got out of the Marine Corps in like 2015, and he got married before he got out. Quickly after he got out, they started having problems. They separated. He used to call me in the middle of the night, drunk, and he must have done that 10 times. And I always picked up the phone. And so all those times, I would just sit there and talk to him, and I'd say, Bobby, You're going to be fine. Like, go back to sleep, call me in the morning, things like that, try to encourage him. And one night I remember I was really upset because I think I either had a really early morning ahead of me or I had a really late night behind me. And I answered, but I was upset because I wanted to sleep. And I told Bobby, I was like, look, dude, you need to get it together because people died so that we could continue on and make something of our lives. If you're not able to use the life that you have to do something that's of value, then they died for nothing. And so if I do nothing else with my life, it's to, one, live for Christ, but two, also live for the people who give me the freedoms to be able to witness to others for Christ. People don't realize that there's countries in the world where it's illegal to talk about Jesus Christ. And so people died for that freedom so that we could still do that. And so for me to be able to witness to a veteran, it's really valuable to me. And that's really the void. So I get to use the experiences that I had in the Marine Corps. I get to use them for God's glory. And I get to do it really without even the intention of trying to save someone, but just to love them. And maybe God uses that relationship in the future. I don't know. But he called me to love him first and then to love my neighbor second. And so those are the two greatest commandments. And I take that very seriously. I worked for many years on learning how to love people unconditionally, especially, I'll just be honest with you, especially those of Islamic descent. Anybody who wore the mam jams or had head coverings and stuff, it was like an immediate triggered response. And it took me years to work through that. I can't say that I'm going to walk up and give somebody a hug like that, but at least I could have the confidence to go and speak to them and, not have the transgression in my heart towards them. And that took a lot of prayer and a lot of time. And, it makes me more effective in this organization to be able to love others because somebody needs to, frankly. These veterans, they need love, they need acceptance, regardless of what their past is. They just need blanket love. I mean, they just need it. They don't need any strings attached. Sometimes they don't even really need me to say anything. Sometimes they just need me to listen. And that's not easy to do if all you're thinking about is yourself. So that's really, in a nutshell, what God has provided me with the Irreverent Warriors.
So before we move forward, because there's some things I want to ask you about that, but I want to go back a little bit. So, and the way I say it, I mean, everybody says, well, I got saved. I always tell people, in 2016 is when I surrendered my life completely to Christ. And so everything, he's got everything. Like you mentioned earlier about money, my wife and I came to the realization that nothing we own, not a penny in the bank, not a blade of grass on the farm, nothing belongs to us. It's all his. We've just been given stewardship over it.
Yep.
And I don't want to get to the end and God say, well, man, you could have been a much better steward than what you were. And, so you have to, like you say, you have to let go of yourself and put others first. And that's hard, especially I think for a lot of us guys, military, regardless of what you did in the service or what period you served in, we're built up to be pretty independent and pretty strong, by the military, by just the, being in service. I mean, you're even the Air Force guys, nobody get your feelings hurt, but
they need love too.
They need love too. And my coasties too. I hope Michael's watching. He's actually a retired chief, and I think he did some spec ops stuff too, but I give him a ration because, he's a coastie. I mean, you got to give him, it's like default. You got to give him crap. And then of course, us and you guys are always at each other's throats, but, when we're out in town, it's a different story. And on base, it's, it's one thing, But my best friends were they were two guys from Texas, and they were both Marines. And when we were in California. But anyway, I love the fact, man, that you. Well, what I was getting at was, did you join the service? Were you already a fully surrendered follower of Christ, or did that
Nope.
come through the military? Did it come in between? How did that happen?
So I met my now wife in 2012, and we dated for like 2 weeks. And she basically said, if you're not interested in a relationship with Christ, this is not going to go any further. And so
Wow.
so I started going to church with her. And at first it was just because I really liked her. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. And it just turned into a lot more over the years. And really, like, when I was feeling that void of, what I was missing from like the military community, I really dumped a lot of myself into the church. And I haven't stopped doing that and replaced it with Irreverent Warriors. But that time that I had, I was being equipped to what I'm doing now. I lead a discipleship group I lead 3 other men. And then the last 2 years before this, I was being equipped for discipleship. And so it's a multiplication process. And so I'm continually being equipped, and I'm equipping others. And so, but yeah, I surrendered in October of 2012, right before I left for deployment. And it was pretty rough the first like 2 years of that life, trying to get straight, because in Afghanistan, like, totally isolated, and I was really such a young believer. Like, I really didn't have the good habits and tendencies to, I knew right and wrong and things like that, and I was like trying to do the right thing as much as I could, clean up my language, trying to do what I thought I could do that I knew up to that point. I didn't know a whole lot. And it wasn't that I was trying to live by a set of rules or anything. But I didn't fully grasp grace at the time either. So, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I tried to clean my act up as much as I could. But I didn't really have a lot of support and foundation to lean on. I got back from Afghanistan, and I actually put God in a box for a while, because I felt like God had done so much for me while I was in Afghanistan, that the little stuff that I was struggling with back home afterwards were so minuscule that, I didn't really feel like God needed to hear about that stuff. And I was completely wrong about that. And so really, over the next like 2 years, we were going to my wife's home church. And it was really when we decided to leave that church, which is about 30 minutes away from us. I was missing community. I got out of the Marine Corps and I didn't have the sense of community that I needed. So we joined a church in Greensboro, and joined a church that had a solid community. And so we've been going to there ever since 2016. So I guess I was still in the Marine Corps at the time, but was still missing what I felt like was growth in my faith. I had hit kind of a peak. But it was really at Westover where I learned a lot and really, transitioned a lot.
It's interesting because first off, I'm going to praise your wife for her to tell you that if you weren't interested in a relationship with Christ, that y'all weren't going to go any further.
That's her in a nutshell.
That is absolutely amazing. It's a blessing. God bless her. I pray that she bestows her personality to every woman that she runs into, because that is so unique. Her to be that bold and that upfront, regardless of what she was feeling emotionally for you. It's like God first.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. And the other thing too is, something that you mentioned is something that I think us Christians, we don't always, I don't know why my camera keeps doing that. Maybe I should move my hands. I think that we miss the mark sometimes because discipleship is so important. The devil, the way he works is the second that me or you or anybody else surrenders our life to Christ, he comes gunning. I mean, he comes with everything he's got. And if he can't get you, he's going to get your wife. And he can't get your wife, he's going to go after your kids. If he can't get your kids, he can go after your job. And so if you don't have that support system, and then like you said, you surrendered and then boom, you got deployed, and man, I mean, you were missing that discipleship that you're giving to other people now.
Yeah.
And that I was very blessed that one of the people that I had with me when I first surrendered, he'd done 3 tours. I think the last one he was in the 82nd, did like 61 jumps before he got a profile on his legs, and then he couldn't jump anymore. He did combat jumps. He did, he did time in Afghanistan. He did time everywhere. And so, and he had a really, really, unique perspective about how to transition as far as dealing with your PTSD with God versus, all the other means. And there's a lot of means out there besides the VA. There's a lot of stuff, resources today, because we've gotten better at it. But I was very fortunate to have him as I was moving, and he instilled some really deep, beliefs that I still have. And one thing I loved about him is that he never told me, JR, this is what I think, or this is what I think you should do, or this is how you should look at this scenario that you're in. He always said, this is what the Bible says about it.
Right.
He always went to scripture, always. And so I just think it's awesome that you're where you're at, because you're in a position, to be there for guys that the system has failed in other circumstances.
Yeah, and that's what we really try to do at Irreverent Warriors is, people, we've gotten suggestions before, like, you guys should offer professional resources and you guys should, have liaisons and things like that. And while that's all really valuable, all those things are kind of in place already. And so that's not necessarily our bread and butter. Our bread and butter is bringing veterans together. Our community is what we thrive on. Our community, because if we can get veterans plugged into the community, the resources are there and we know about them. And there are people who can help you get the resources that you need. I like to tell people that we're like a glue between other veteran support organizations and the VA. Somebody here has dealt with what you need and can point you in the right direction. You only have to ask. And so that's what we try to do is we bring veterans in, we love them, we give them the sense of purpose and community that they were missing before in their lives. We show them they care, and we try to encourage them to get better. Or maybe they figure out for themselves that they need to get better and they get the help for themselves because they see this person here who I'll use the word damaged. It's not really what they are, but just for lack of better words, who is damaged and wants to get better and is getting better. And they're like, they can do it. And they're doing it with the help of the Irreverent Warriors and the community and the other people around them who are encouraging them to get better. You were talking about 75 hard before we joined this. At the beginning of this year, there's like a huge amount of people, at least in leadership, from Irreverent Warriors who were doing 75 hard together and holding each other accountable. Like people who didn't even really know each other that well, don't live near each other. They're just connected through social media and they're connected through the IW family. And so that's really what it's about for us, man. And I love that there's no stipulations. It's no strings attached. It is just show up as you are. You're welcome here. We love you. We want you to be a part of our organization. and come wear silkies, eat crayons, and have a good time.
Okay, we got to hit a couple of things. First off, Frank Mantua, who's watching, I don't know if you know Frank. Frank is a Marine, okay? And Frank is a Marine who created crayons, edible crayons.
Yeah.
And they're called CREs, crayons ready to eat. And they come in little packages that look like they kind of mimic the MRE.
You said he's watching?
With black writing on them. And so
you said he's watching?
He's watching, yeah.
Well, I just ate a real crayon. So send me some edible ones.
Yeah. There you go, Frank.
Yo, give me some crayons to raffle off at our hike.
And yeah, he's awesome. They just got their co-packer who's gonna make them that's compliant with FDA and all that stuff.
I'm probably gonna get sick. No,
right. And so
stuck in my teeth.
The way you bit into that, I bet it's not the first time. So I'm just saying.
Well, it's not a red one. I spit it back out. I thought my daughter brought me a red one. It's pink. I like the cherry or the strawberry.
So that's pretty awesome. Yeah, we need to get Frank to get you some edible ones. I lost my train of thought. I was laughing so hard. I can't believe you just bit it in real quick. Frank, you need to get on this. We need to stop Marines from eating anything but CREs.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sold on the Irreverent Warriors. I'm going to get a hold of the New Braunfels chapter and I'm going to go check them out. And I wanted to say, so I'm not doing, I did 75 hard. I started, then I got COVID and I had to stop because I literally couldn't get out of bed for a few days, but I'm doing something called Caleb 49. And the reason I chose Caleb 49 and the individual who is the guy behind it, PK Brian Stacy, is one, he's a veteran. Two, he's a believer like we are, and I know him personally. I mean, he's been to my house, and I've shared a meal with him, and so I know he's a good man. I know he's a follower of Christ, and I love, Caleb was 85 years old, and he was doing things that 40-year-olds were doing, and so that's one of his things that he likes to remind people, that just because we get old doesn't mean that we have to get old. And so we got to take care of our body. And he's been a great supporter of me for many years. And I love him for it. But anyway, so I'm gonna get involved with the local group because I see you guys on Facebook. Like you said, you have a huge social media presence. And I love that idea, and whatever I can do to help, is definitely and I think if everybody gets involved, if we all get involved, we can actually do something to reduce the numbers of our men and women who are got to stop moving again, that they think that the only hope that they have is to leave, And so I'm so glad you came on. I didn't know what to expect. I read a little bit about you, but and I know we talked just a little bit, but I really admire what you're doing. You've taken a gift that God's given you, and you're using it for something that is going to change people's lives. Hopefully save a bunch of them, because that's what we really need. And,
yeah, we're hoping that this year we can try and captivate some data to be able to have some measurable KPIs to actually see how well we're doing. A lot of that is done through surveys and stuff like that. And so we're hoping that we have some important information from that. We do have research from the VA. Between 2018 and 2019, our numbers have dropped, I think 7%. And so it's all good news. We're still up in the 20 to 22 per day range. But the scary part is that we haven't seen the numbers from COVID yet. So
yeah,
because the VA releases a report every single year, and they're about 2 years behind on the data. So I looked into the data from 2021, the end of 2021, as they released it for 2019. So when they release it this year at the end of 2022, it's going to be on the data for 2020. And that's probably going to be pretty horrendous.
Yeah, because it's not just veterans either. Like people who had issues anyway with being isolated, that didn't help anything. And my wife is in that. She's an epidemiologist, and so she deals firsthand with. I mean, you talk about people who like they just get frustrated, call her and rip her ears off for no reason. And then you think about you just multiply that with the masses, and then people that already have issues, with being isolated, or really maybe they don't even know that they shouldn't be isolating, and they had no choice. And so I think those numbers are not going to be great for anybody. But
yeah,
I think our community.
Let me mention how people can. So that link tree got at the bottom. The second T should be an R.
Is it?
It's all good. Yeah, link tree, LINKTR.
Oh, I got it right here.
There you go. Okay, so we have a pretty large social media following. Like I said, on Facebook, if you want to find a chapter, it's going to be IW space space and then the name of the city. And then for Instagram, it's IW dot and then the city. So another thing that you could do is go to the National Irreverent Warriors page, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, and say, hey, I live in this area. Do you guys have a hike nearby? And somebody will help you. So if you're trying to find a hike, you can do it that way. You can also go to irreverentwarriors.com, go to the events page, and they have all the hikes for the whole year. There's 90 hikes. And so you can, if you can click on a link, that means that link is ready to go and you're able to sign up for the hike. The hikes are either $0 or $5 or whatever you want to donate. We don't require money for people to hike, but a lot of people end up putting $5 in the pot or whatever. And so there's that. And then we also have a lot of subgroups. Like we just opened another one for cooking. We've got some for IW outdoors for people who like to do outdoor recreational therapy. Find a local chapter. Again, there's no strings attached. So you're not joining some sort of club. Okay. This is just find a chapter, subscribe to or join the group and pay attention and see about going out to an event, go to a hike. I promise you it will change your life. And if it doesn't, come find me and you can come to my hike and it'll change your life. And then, so we're in Greensboro, North Carolina. This will be our first hike this year. We've done a really good job and so far with planning and organizing. We've got some great stops planned already. I will say I get this sometimes. Some people will tell me that they won't go to hikes and stuff like that because we stop at a lot of bars and there is some drinking, and you shouldn't be surprised. Okay. But the thing so a lot of folks who are struggling with alcohol rehabilitation, they struggle with that. They don't want to be around it. Totally understandable. But I will say that we try to do a good job of having events that don't have any alcohol there. Like my chapter, we're going to Hanging Rock, which is a mountain about 45 minutes from us. We're going to do some camping. It's a state park, so there's no alcohol allowed. So don't worry about that aspect of it. There's other opportunities and other places that, other chances that you can come and have community with us that don't involve drinking. There's actually a lot of people at the hikes who are sober and, have been through the process and all that. And if you want to go to a hike, but you're afraid of, maybe you don't know somebody and you need some accountability, send a message to the coordinator and say, hey, look, I'm sober. Is there somebody there you can link me up with who can kind of be there with me? And there's going to be little packs within the hike where people who are sober are going to hang out with one another and keep each other accountable. That is a thing. I've seen it before. I've even heard of people saying, I wish we could have all sober hikes. And, I don't know, maybe one day, I don't drink at the hikes because I like to stay, sharp, because I'm in leadership and I don't need to be doing that. But, and I also just don't need to drink to have a good time. And so,
Yeah.
but when the hike's over, we have after parties, I might have one or two just to, whatever, just hang out. But yeah, so it's a really good environment. The people there, and the other thing too, you meet some people there who have been through some serious stuff. And I've heard so many crazy stories from people. I met people who were in some of the worst places at some of the worst times. And so it's really you're in the presence of some of the best warriors of this generation at some of these hikes. Truly.
That's awesome.
You get to meet some really cool people.
I put a name in the link here. When you go back and look at it or whatever, James A. Feltz, he is a former Army Ranger officer, and he lives in Raleigh. And he's part of Joint Task 214, which is a coaching group with another retired lieutenant colonel, I think. I don't know. They were both special forces Army guys. And but James is in that area, and he's an awesome guy, and he's a believer. And I don't know, maybe he'll go to one of your hikes, man, or who knows. I mean, he's just a good guy to know all the way around.
By the way, if you don't know what silkies are, got some fresh ones here for you.
Yeah, listen, fluffy guys don't wear silkies, bro. I'm just saying. You skinny guys can take that all day long.
One of my coordinators is about 260. And tomorrow we're having an event at a bar downtown, and he will be in silkies.
Oh, my. No pictures, please.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Fluffy guys can wear silkies. And here's the other thing, too. You see some crazy stuff at these hikes. There's actually a shirt on Irreverent Warriors. You can buy this shirt. Somebody showed up with a pink shirt, a crop top, and the picture is a fluffy veteran wearing a crop top pink shirt. I mean, it's just it's hilarious.
Funny. That is funny. I mean, I would go see that. I'd go watch that.
Yeah. And people show up in crazy stuff too. Like the hike in Cincinnati last year was on Halloween, and so everybody wore Halloween costumes. And I think I saw somebody wearing one of those inflatable dinosaur costumes to a hike last year. Just crazy stuff, man. It's so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. I am looking forward though, because it gives accountability, and my trainer PK Stacy and Robert Torres, who's a Marine here in San Antonio. Those two guys are always on my, and we always start the same way, because I always let myself go really way out, and then to reel me back in, we start with hikes, and I know all the little parks around here and places where you can go, and nice trails to get started again. And so that's how I usually start my fit. I start with hiking, and but right now I can go walk quite a distance. That's one thing I've always.
Me too.
Regardless of where I was at, I've always been.
I don't run.
My dad was like that too. Yeah, I can walk in boots or tennis shoes or combat boots. I mean, it doesn't matter.
A lot of people walking in Crocs.
I don't do shoes that don't have support anymore. I used to wear, the like Vans, and I can't.
The VA issued me some insert tonight, and I've migrated over to the high top Converses so that I can wear them with casual clothes and still be able to put my inserts in them, because my inserts, they'll push my foot out if I wear tennis shoes. So I put on the high tops and I'm all good.
Yeah. And I use New Balance because they're made here. And, I order them and it's the way to go, especially when you're a little bit bigger guy. But I still want to do a triathlon as a Clydesdale. So that's my goal for this year.
Nice.
By the end of the year, I want to do a Clydesdale class triathlon. So we'll see how that goes. It's never about me. It's always about my guests, and it's always about God, and it's always about country, and there's always coffee involved somehow. And right now I can smell coffee because my hat no longer smells like I had. It smells like roasted coffee. So thank you so much for your time. I'm definitely going to share this out. I really want people to connect with you, and I'm going to reach out to the local New Braunfels chapter over here and see what they got going on, and keep doing what you're doing, man. Don't ever let off the gas, man. God's got you in a position right now where it's one thing that my wife and I always like to say. Sometimes you say something really big, right? And it's like, it's right out of scripture or it's out of experience and it's huge. And you're like, wow, man, that really hit me. It's big. Sometimes you say like the smallest thing, but it hits somebody in a way that you may never know ever, and so that's part of our commission, right? We're supposed to make disciples and we're supposed to plant seeds, and God doesn't always let us harvest those seeds. And most of the time we don't get to water them or cultivate them or anything. We're just supposed to plant them. But, it goes back to what I was saying. Like it doesn't, like you just never know at what point, what comes out of your mouth that somebody needs to hear. And that's why I love the podcast, because even after we're done, people will watch it on YouTube. They'll watch it on all the different, platforms that we have. They'll watch it on, it goes out to all the like Amazon podcast and Stitcher and Spotify and all those. And so people will download it and the message needs to be heard and somebody out there is waiting to hear it. So thanks for taking your time out on a Friday night. And I look forward to see what you're doing and hopefully see you on a hike somewhere, man.
Yeah. If I come to Dallas, you're going to have to come out.
Yeah, for sure.
Come all that way. You have to come a couple hours for me.
It's not bad, man. There's a lot of people in Dallas. So
cool.
Well, listen, man, I'm gonna put you in the green room. I'm gonna close the show out. Hang on tight for 1 second. I'll get back to you in just a minute. I'm gonna close this out. And thanks again for your time, brother. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right. There you go, folks. Episode 7, season 2. God Country Coffee, and I tell you that I don't hand select my guests. I put notices that I need guests and kind of a ballpark of what I'm looking for. And you just never know what you're going to get. And God just keeps blessing us with people who are doing such great work in his ministry. And so if you don't know anything about that, reach out to me, reach out to Chris. If you need a Bible, reach out to me, send me a message. I buy Bibles to give away. And so if you just need somebody to talk to, reach out. If you're a veteran, you want to get involved with the Irreverent Warriors. I didn't know much about it, but I'm excited to know about it now and excited to reach out to my local chapter. So like I always end my show, treat each other the way God intended us to treat one another with love, kindness, and respect. Until next week, God bless you.